Well, good evening. Can you hear me okay? All right. If I get a little excited because it's going to get warm enough, I'm finally going to go be able to hit a golf ball at the end of this week. It's going to be in the 60s. I heard that this is a Tea Party group.
Yeah.
I heard that there's also a coffee party here in the area. Any coffee partiers here? You're welcome. How about beer party, bowling party, poker party, anything else? You're supposed to start out with a little bit of levity. The only thing I can tell you that I thought was funny was a long time ago, pertaining to our subject, was a long time ago when I was stationed up in Oregon. The liberals up there, commonly known as the logging guys, called them tree huggers, started to deal about the spotted owl. And I saw a bumper sticker one time on the back of a flatbed, I should say a log truck. And the bumper sticker had a spotted owl laying on the back of a logging truck, and the caption said, "Build a house with this." Let me get started with what I'm doing. Agenda 21. I've got Agenda 21 on a jump drive. I don't have all this quote anchor here. This is typical bureaucracy.
Yeah. Looks like a healthcare bill.
It's about 4 times that.
Some of you may know me as a former or as a John Birch rep. I'm no longer with the John Birch Society. I got a chance to leave that and retire in November of last year, and it's been an amazing 5 months getting to know you're so busy when you're retired. My presentation tonight is one that I developed, as we already heard before, over time. And I'm going to refer to a lot of resources. I don't know if you have writing material or not, or pen and paper or anything, but I have a lot of resources, and I'm going to tell you where it came from or where you can go to find out what you need to know, because you're not going to get it all here tonight. There's a lot to Agenda 21 than just Agenda 21. And that's just the front end of the issue. Land use, restrictions on where you live, food, thank you, what you're going to buy, how you're going to buy, things like that. We're going to meet some individuals who are behind this thing. I want to give you a background of where it came from, why it came, what it's for, and when we finish up, we're going to present to you some options that you can take if you want to commit to doing something about it. By the way, some of the information, this stuff is pretty fluid. Some of the information I just got last week. This is from Dr. Kennedy's organization. I've got something to talk about. Then I just found out about some other things. So we'll get going. So let us talk about Agenda 21. And we're going to start right here. And why are we going to start here?
It's the beginning.
Right. There's a reason for that. You're going to find out that this is not just about kissing rocks and hugging trees. It is also paganism. Man was given a responsibility, was he not? One of the things that God told Adam was, you are responsible. You're going to be the husbandman. You and your wife and your family as they grow are going to take care and have dominion over everything. You're responsible for the earth. I don't know if you can read this too much. This is a guy named Dresden James, which may be a play on his real name. Can you see that? Can I read that to you? Okay, truth's initial commotion is directly proportional to how deeply the lie is believed. The lie is, the emotions are rising, it's getting to be a jungle out there. As you can tell, it's so hot this spring already. Okay? And it isn't that the world being around that agitated the people, but the world wasn't flat. So in other words, your paradigm was shifted on you, and you weren't able to grasp it. The people weren't able to grasp it. When a well-packaged web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses, think of the mass media, over generations, the truth will seem utterly preposterous. And the speaker, a raving lunatic. The ideal tyranny is ignorantly self-administered. by its own victims. The perfect slaves are therefore those which blissfully and unawarely enslave themselves. So we're going to watch the Colts, we're going to watch the IU, we're going to watch the Pacers, we're going to go get me an Ethel, go get me a beer, that kind of stuff. We're going to play ball all the time and talk about all the trivia, and the whole world falls down around us. Now, part of the history of Agenda 21 involves the United Nations. And I don't know where these guys are marching at. They're Spanish and Indian troops. They're in uniform. We need to talk about the UN, because this is where the things come from. I call that the beast on the East River. The land was given to the United Nations by a family called the Rockefellers. Donated it. You know what that stuff is worth? Donated it. Which, by the way, those guys who were flying those planes on September 11, 2001, were homing in on the wrong building. A little history of the United Nations. The first Secretary General was Alger Hiss. Some of you who are as old as I am might remember Alger Hiss and who he was. Turns out he was a communist agent. He was Roosevelt's, the supreme egotistic president we used to have. His right-hand man at Yalta, he gave everything to Papa Joe or Uncle Joe Stalin. He was the first UN secretary. 46 of the 50-some-odd Americans who were with his contingent to form the final formation of the United Nations were proved to be people who went along with the communist line. Which, by the way, I got a World War II diary from my dad. And this is back in, it's a copyright date of 1941 or 43, I can't remember. But already there, this is for the GIs now. They're talking about fighting for democracy and the United Nations. This is their all propaganda. Already, someone had something that they were thinking about. They were propagandizing their troops. The history of the UN is terrible. They've done very few good things. And we're going to show you some of the bad things they've done. But you know there's been over 150 wars since these peacekeepers came into being. They always lean towards the communist goals. The Americans or whoever never really seemed to win any. Then, of course, you had the Earth Summit we're going to come to. Come on down here, the microphone's out. And I'm too old to shout. This is Mr. Hiss on the right. He's dressed up like a businessman. On the left is his uniform that he received from the federal government when he was doing his jail time for being a perjurer. Thanks to Whitaker Chambers. Here's a picture of UN troops taken from the New American Magazine, which is a publication of the John Birch Society. These guys are Belgian troops. This was taken when Bill Clinton was going to save Somalia. They were torturing this kid. Later passed away. These are what some of our UN guys like to do for fun. This is from a book called 46 Angry Men. You can find that in Amazon.com. Katanga province in the 1960s was led by, I think, a fellow named Tashombe. He was a Christian. Katanga province was a province or a state in the Belgian Congo. The communists were agitating, along with they were doing all over in Africa to stop colonialism, as they were calling it. They actually did. How many people have died since they stopped colonialism? But anyway, Katanga said, okay, fine, we do not want to be communist Belgian Congo. We'll become our own little country, and you go do what you want to do. So there's doctors over there. The UN said, that's not going to happen. They sent in UN troops and attacked the peace-loving people of Katanga, who, by the way, for 7 months had one of the most free nations, states in Africa, highest standard of living other than South Africa and Rhodesia at the time, and peace. But the UN said, no, you're not going to do it. So they had this one thing after another with these resolutions. They bring in UN troops, and what the doctors got upset about is, one, all people were being attacked, UN aircraft specifically targeted the hospitals that are clearly marked with the big white panel with the red cross. Peace. Okay, 10 planks of communism. Communism are involved with what's going on here. One of them is abolition of property rights. You can get a Communist Manifesto pretty cheap in both places if you want to look at it. That's one of the 10 planks. We won't talk about the heavy progressive income tax. We have enough of that problem. And this is the United Nations. I haven't figured out how to highlight what I need to highlight on this thing, but you'll find the World Health Organization, International Monetary Fund, World Bank. All these are people, organizations that you will find mentioned in this stack of junk called Agenda 21. It's a battle between the forces of socialism and the American Constitution, where our rights and our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence tell us that our rights come from God. The Declaration of Human Rights and the UN Charter says all rights come from government. And you have a right to do this, and you have a right to do that, and you have a right to do other, unless prescribed by law. So they give you it with one, they take it from another. Chronology. In 1996, there was the Iron Mountain Report. You can find this thing. It's called Report from Iron Mountain by a guy named Lewis. When this came out, it really raised a ruckus when people on the constitutional side of the issue heard about it. Then right away, they came out with, oh, this was just a spoof. Well, unfortunately, John Kenneth Galbraith was there. How many of you know that name? How many of you know that he has two left arms, right? He can't make a right-hand turn. He said, I was there. We talked about this stuff. One of the things the report from Iron Mountain said is, we need to have a way to control the people. One of the best ways we can figure out with our think tank is an environmental problem, because the threat of atomic war was going away, a pandemic, people say, come on, go away, I'm not going to take this stupid shot, and that kind of thing. So they came up with this, hey, maybe we ought to do something about how bad the climate's going to get. Okay, so let me get back to the chronology. 1987, the Brundtland report. Mrs. Brundtland, or Ms. Brundtland, is a Scandinavian. She's a vice president of the World Socialist Union. She was also something with the UN, but she came out with a report, something along the lines of our common future or something like that. I can't remember the exact name of it, but you'll find it in Agenda 21 booklet. Then they had the 1992 conference in Rio, and that was a great conference. We're going to see pictures of that thing and talk about some folks that were there. That was the big World Earth Summit. And out of that thing came a bunch of stuff. Then you had Rio Plus 5, and then just last year was Rio Plus 20. But they didn't talk so much. At least the news didn't talk so much about it. The first one was a big celebration, just amazing. Okay, so here they are, spending all that money, talking about poor people and how poor they live, and they spend all kinds of money on themselves down there in Rio. Sin City, it's worse than New Orleans, can you believe that? This is a magazine cover from the New American Magazine. Talked about that summit, and some of my info comes from there. You'll see some pictures of guys, people on there. You're going to talk about them. This is what came out of the 1992 Earth Summit. Had the Convention on Climate Change, global warming. The Earth Charter. That's real. That's their Bible. Okay? The Convention on Biological Diversity. I'm not sure what that is unless they're reviving Darwinism or something. Agenda 21, the Commission on Sustainability, and a new world religion. And they're trying to teach that to our children, if you go to government schools. Okay, I thought we were going to have audience, sorry. Agenda 21 is definitely a comprehensive and global. This is what it's saying. This is from Bill Jasper, who's a senior editor of New American Magazine. It covers everything. Where you work, how you get to work, where you live, how light bulbs, toilets, the food you're allowed to eat, not allowed to eat, your health care, everything. It covers everything. Okay? Because in case you haven't picked up on the secret yet, we're talking about people control. The haves, or my wannabes, taking care of us. Oh, I must have hit my button here. Okay, this is from our boy Wild Willie. Mrs. Clinton's husband. Came out during his administration. I'm not going to read out all this stuff on there. I'll just talk a little bit and you can see it. Stabilize the population. What does stabilize the population mean? Sterilization. Infanticide, otherwise known as abortion. How about? Oh, geezericide. You know, I'm getting on that end. I'm getting on the end. You see the movie Soylent Green? Remember that? I'm getting to that age, like Edward G. Robinson was in that movie, you know. I don't know how I'm going to be looking at a McDonald's burger there. Find the movie Soylent Green. This is going to, after you study Agenda 21, I'll just for the heck of it, especially if you want to embarrass yourself. Okay, we got to expand the curricula, materials, training opportunities that teach sustainable development. Where are we going to get the curriculum? Where are we going to find that? Yeah, let's see. I've got a Agenda 21 fact sheet. How about if we go to Chapter 7, Section H of that? Is this really Agenda 21?
Ask her, she printed it out.
Anybody have a bass boat? You need an extra anchor? Excuse me. Okay, Chapter 7, Section H. Teaching our children. We're talking outcome-based education. We're talking Goals 2000. We're talking school to work. We're talking Common Core. Common Core. Us. And a thing called New Generation or Next Generation Scientific Standards. Stabilizing population without changing the consumption and waste patterns would not be enough. So now you're going to all have to go on an involuntary diet. And guess who's going first? New York City. Got Mayor Know-it-all up there telling us what we can have to drink, how big the drink is. And I think they're going on some food things. White County, Newton County, Tippecanoe County, I think somewhere further south along the west side of the state, over towards, what's Fort Wayne, Allen County? Wells County. Allen and Wells haven't done it yet, but I know Wells County was talking about it. But these lovely things that are up there in the sky, swirling around, aren't they pretty? How many remember Lady Bird Johnson? Remember her big thing was the billboards? Well, she was here to help us now. Okay, we're going to be talking about windmills, one of my favorite subjects. Okay, who gave us Agenda 21? Well, Maurice Strong. Maurice Strong was a rent-a-cop at the United Nations. You go into UN, you get your security visitor's badge or something. He did some little punk job like that. 7 years later, he's the CEO of a couple of big conglomerates in Kenya. What happened? How do you get to be a big deal? Maurice Strong is a very religious man. He owns a big property called Boca Grande in Colorado. And he's so religious, he built a shrine to some earth gods. He's so religious, he went to St. John the Divine Church in New York City, which is a known liberal church. And he is the guest minister leading the congregation with a guy named Al Gore, while the congregation came up with an offering of bowls of earthworms and compost. See that? Got to get rid of the industrializations. What's he going to do with all his money? Who's going to take care of all his Bentleys or whatever he's got, big cars? What's going to happen? But he was the founder of the UN Environmental Program and also was the chairman of the 1992 Earth Summit down here in Rio. Oops. Sustainable development. This is our boy Maurice Strong. He says here that you, the middle class, and me, the middle class, which, by the way, the middle class has historically been the enemy of kings. You can't be a king if you have a middle class. You only have the kingly class and everybody working as slaves. So we have to go. So, what does it say? How many had a hamburger? Roast beef? You're not going to confess? You did a bad thing. You had me. Who drove their bike or their electric car? Electric car? Good for you. That you're the only one that uses fossil fuels. A real electric car, not a hybrid. Okay. Now, right now, I know because of global warming, we had to turn on the air conditioning earlier this year. But it says here we shouldn't we use too much air conditioning in the church building, in the office building, in the house. But remember, it's the affluent middle class. It's not, hey, this is not Mo Strong saying, hey, me and the guys, we need to cut back. No, you and the girls have to cut back. Right? Hey, communism is dead, right? Ask the folks in Cuba, ask the folks down there where Chavez just passed away. How about folks over in, who's that Looney Tune over there? The guy from North Korea. Who's that son of Warner? This is a few years ago. Glasnost, perestroika, tear down the wall. Phony. What's he got to do with the UN and anything else? Ha! I don't know this man. This is 5 years later, Rio plus 5. They're having a conversation together. In Rio. Remember what they said about the communism? Abolition of all private property? Okay, you know what a diaper swami is, right? Think of Warner Brothers cartoon and Bugs Bunny's somewhere where there's in the Canada or something. You got a little skinny guy with a diaper, he's playing his flute, and the snake comes out, you know, and Bugs Bunny does his thing. Diaper swami. Another diaper swami who was a great socialist, but also someone of great fame, thanks to the media and the left-wing side of, I should say, the people behind the scenes who wanted it. A diaper swami was a guy named Nehru, but we won't talk about him. Okay, so you got Al Gore, smartest man in the world, next to, what's her name? Clinton's wife. This guy's so smart he doesn't have the internet. Yeah. He's so smart. When he had some pictures taken as vice president at the Grand Canyon, there was some ponderosa pine or something in the way of the view of the canyon, so they had the Secret Service, or Forest Service had the Secret Service, or anyway, they cut the trees down so they could have a picture of Al Gore with the behind him. He couldn't park somewhere else and get his picture shot. He's got a mansion down in Tennessee. He would light up a small city. Okay, he gave us the great hockey stick. Remember that? The hockey stick where the heating pattern in the world went like this, and it shot up, and then turned into false doctrine and false reporting and everything. Well, since he kind of went underneath, you know, an earth in a balance, everybody's been throwing that in the fireplace to keep it warm, keep the house warm. He's done something else now. He's got a thing called Climate Change Committee or something like that. There's 26 people, by the way, in the state of Indiana who have gone down there. I think it cost him a couple $1,000. You can go down to somewhere in Tennessee where he has this place, take the course, and you can come back and go to places like the college in Wabash or the college up in Goshen or somewhere and teach our kids the dangers and perils of global warming. And then they can go out and be the local activists. All right? So he isn't, you don't see him now in the front. He's working behind the scenes. And then, of course, there's the Swift Boat Command. Any Vietnam vets in here? You're all that old or that young? My goodness. Okay. All right. Al Gore got 3 Purple Hearts. How do you do it? Well, he had his hand grenade one time, pulled the pin, and didn't realize that he threw like a girl. Okay. Another time he got hit and he messed up twice. He messed up an attack once and got people hurt. But he got a little nick. Purple Heart. And then the 3rd Purple Heart, he took credit for what another Swift Boat crew had done. Somehow he got away with it. That's why the guys in the Swift Boat said the book Unfit for Command. Okay. And now what is Kerry doing? Oh, well, after what we had in the last several sessions. Okay. These guys were down in Rio. That's where that picture came from, the cover of that issue of the New American magazine. California. What are they called? Moonbeam. There you go, Governor Moonbeam. Jerry Brown was down there, and he's back again. So these are the kind of people who went down to the Rio conference in 1992. Here's a guy. Everybody remember the show that Sunday night, was it? Well, they were so good. This guy's a World War II hero. He drove the Germans crazy with this operation that he was doing. He did a lot of things for scuba, an advancement of that scientific study. But look what he said. This is UNESCO, which is part of the UN, and then the following year was down there in Rio. Let's go down to the second one. An American-born child, environmental is too expensive. He's used up a car, TV, smartphone, cell phone, sousaphone, whatever it takes, a battery or something. And you can't maintain them in this world economy. So what do we have to do? Throw our kids in the furnace? And American women must be subject to some manner of regulation besides licensing and mandatory abortion practices. Okay. He says also that we must eliminate 350,000 people a day in order to sustain the earth like it is when he wrote it then. Now, I don't know where he got those numbers. Here's my question. Mr. Cousteau, if you feel so strongly about it, why didn't you set the example and lead the way and went first? No, he wants you and me to go first so he can sit around here and do it. That don't take much courage. Zbigniew Brzezinski worked for Jimmy Carter. He's with the Trilateral Commission. And some of these commissions overlap. This is at the Gorbachev Forum. He says we can't leap into world government in one leap. Well, what's that got to do with what we're talking about? If we have Agenda 21, which will eventually become totally under control of the UN, we will have world government. Remember Maurice Strong, the errand boy who became a gazillionaire? This is his benefactor. And this here is from Rockefeller's own words in his autobiography from 2004 or something. Couldn't keep his mouth shut. But it's proven what a lot of people would say a long time, is this family's been up to something for a long time with a bunch of people who act behind the scenes, and it's a cabal, and they're planning world government. He says, if that's what you say it is, that's the charge. I stand guilty on account of it. He's saying what people have been talking about this man. You're planning to take away our freedom. You're planning to put us in a world government. You're planning to direct everything we do and enjoy it. And he says, yeah, you're right. Because you know why? Like a lot of people who are like him, they get to the point where they think they've got the cat in the bag and can't keep their mouth shut until they lock the bag up. So thank you. And he may not live long enough to see his new world order come in. This is after the climate change conference. This is under President Bush the first. And it's also my first attempt at scanning something in and making a slide. I thought I'd keep it in there for antique. But anyway, it says greenhouse gas emissions have to be cut by 5.2%. You could probably do that overnight if everybody, 534 people from Washington would go home and shut up. I will not call them the Three Stooges because I will not be rude to Larry Moore. The first one on the top left gave us the Kyoto Protocol. The second one on your left, the philanderer, gave us that sustainability thing we saw earlier about how we're going to teach our children. The no comment on the left, on my left, on your right, gave us what's called the White House Rural Council. Have you heard about that? They're going to come out here in our farmland and they're going to help you folks. Okay, they're going to help you understand things and live better and all these other things. They give you a lot of flowery words. It's in Agenda 21. The law of the sea tree. Several things about that. If I had a straw chip. Excuse me. It's water. Law of the sea tree. It's my personal belief that part of the reason that Senator Lugar lost the race was people found out that he was the prime supporter of the law of the sea treaty. And as people were going around explaining what the law of the sea treaty was, it didn't sit too well for the voters. You can find the law of the sea treaty in chapter 17 and 18 of Agenda 21. Not specifically, because when they write these things, they're definitely foggy, but then a think tank gets together and they come up with this. That's how it works. Let me give you a real quick thing. I don't think that the law of the sea treaty is passed yet, because Kerry, who was the chairman of that committee, said we're not going to have a vote on it until after the primaries, because he didn't want his friend Lugar to lose. Well, done deal. But the stink was so much, there's a possibility they're going to sneak it in sometime between now and next month or two. So if you have a chance, get online, send an email. As far as I know, the latest information I had, which was 2 weeks ago or less, that I bothered to look this up, and nobody had passed it. I hadn't seen anything on the news. How does the law of the sea treaty work? Okay, it covers everything on, under, or over the water. But it has ramifications for people in Wabash and Lionel. You have a river that flows through here. It's named after a train, a cannonball. Okay, it flows down into the Ohio, right? Which flows into the Mississippi, which flows on down into the Gulf. Some of you probably have properties that run off and runs into there somehow with small streams and dry gulches that rain. When it rains, it runs off, like my backyard, it runs and flows down. If the law of the sea treaty is fully implemented, and they really implement this thing, you can have a dry yard or dry pasture that has a little swale in it, that when the rain runs off into the nearest creek, down into the Wabash on its way to the ocean, Agenda 21 can come in your backyard. A law of the sea treaty, chapter 17 and 18. If you read the law of the sea treaty, it's in there. You have to dig for it. You'll find the logical thing says they can come and dictate what you're doing on your property. Don't plant your flowers there. Don't plant your garden there. Move your compost pile, all this other stuff. These people have left nothing to change. Everything's written down for what they want to do. J. Gary Lawrence, he worked for Clinton. And the only reason I have him up here is because a long time, when's the last time you've heard global warming? How many of you recently have heard of climate change? Which, by the way, you notice with the extra cold winter, they're not talking about climate change? Amazing. Okay, what he says is we can't, people are saying there's something going on, there's a conspiracy going on, we've got to change the terminology. So let's call it something else like comprehensive growth planning, management, smart growth, sustainability, all these other nice little words that you're going to find in Agenda 21. Okay? And that's why we're at that way. Okay, green is not new. I don't know if you can see that or not. That's 1904, the German battery-powered car. So, electric is not new. And somewhere in this mess, excuse me for digging around through here. I'm really bad with my notes. I've got a thing about Thomas Edison just talking to Henry Ford. Henry Ford had called Mr. Edison and said, hey, I've got an idea I want to talk to you about. So he's telling him about the internal combustion engine and how it can work and make a car. He wants to build a second car. In a paraphrase, Edison said, you're right. Electric cars aren't going to work. Batteries are too big. They can't go that far. Charge. Where you have a vehicle that's self-contained, it's an internal combustion engine, it carries its own fuel, and you can have filling stations all over the place. Which Henry Ford had never heard of, the idea of stopping for hydrocarbons. He might have never heard that term. But that gave him the thing. So even here we have the father of electricity saying, hey, these things aren't going to work. Which, by the way, we also have the Fisker Automotive Works, who just went out of business with their battery-powered car that weighed about as much as a Bentley. Full charge, this is an electric car, and they're only $100,000. So I know when Papa picks them up on the way home tonight, he should take the one each, okay? He's gone out of business. This $100,000 beauty got 40 miles to the charge. But if you drove slow, you could go 50 miles. Sounds like Slender, or whatever that's called. Okay, solar energy. Now, I'm from the East Coast, and my mom and my grandma had solar dryers, way before they became in the news. I didn't live exactly that bad, but when old folks came over from Italy, at least we had one in our backyard. Okay, so green energy is not new. And that's a solar dryer. That's a freebie, except for your muscle power. Remember how good the clothes used to smell? Where I live now, you're not allowed to put up clotheslines. This is a wind turbine. And it looks like it's some kind of a musical instrument, you notice the graduated pipes. This is the 1st century AD. In the 1st century BC, the Greeks had a rudimentary internal combustion steam boiler. Okay? It's amazing when we look at what happened. In the old days, they might have had chunky-looking light bulbs and funny-looking electric cords and all that other stuff. But boy, they didn't have it as bad as you imagine. There's a wedding solar. If you put a solar sheet on your house, the way I understand it, needs to be cleaned. If it's going to work at its peak efficiency, at least every other year, you have to get up on the roof, clean it. Who's going to go out here in the desert and clean these things? The people who sneak across the border for minimum wage? What kind of cancer risk is that? They want to put these things up mostly in places where we have the most delicate wildlife, which is the desert. I was fortunate in my military career to be stationed in the desert for about 10 years, different places. We found ruts from the Butterfield stage from the century before, still in the ground. You can take your four-wheel drive and go back the following year and see, hey, that's where I drove. Nothing moves long. Old cars that don't rust. All kinds of stuff. But the thing is, this is delicate territory. When the monsoons come, the California poppy, the whole desert is just gorgeous down here in Arizona and California. With the poppy, they're gone in a day or so. They're gone and they seed out for the next year or 2 years when the rain comes. Nancy Pelosi and George Bush. Okay, the bulb on the right is what we normally have, and I think after this year or next year, if you have somebody become a federal offender, they can dislight it. On the left, we have the new one. On the right, Johnny's playing roughhouse in the house, and he knocks the lamp over and breaks it. You sweep it up, throw it in the trash. Don't do that anymore, Johnny. I don't appreciate it. If he breaks the other bulb, now you got a biohazard. A biohazard. That if you report it, it's going to be a six-figure cleanup. Six-figure. How many of those electric cars do we buy for that? All right, not only that, let's take this way out there and just do some wacky thinking. If these articles are made into, if they're such a biohazard, will we eventually be required to have on registration in some government office how many light fixtures we have, how many light bulbs we bought, have to get permission to or account for every one of these things that finally burn out or break or something in order to get a new one? Okay? Carry that to the extreme because it's a good chance these people have already thought about it. I know I did, and I'm not even on their side. It's ridiculous. By the way, there's a newer bulb out that's not like this one here, and it doesn't put out the cycles or whatever you call it. This is very unhealthy bulb. This will make you sick. There's a newer one out that's a little bit better on the eyes, the brain, and stuff. It's amazing what some of these electronics are doing for us. But that thing is not a good bulb. So you better run than ours. Pack them in now. Oh, Lord. Okay, American Geophysical Union. This is a bunch of scientists who say, we like Agenda 21. They even like the new science, new generation science standards. They're on the new generation science list of endorsements, which are so many of them, I didn't look them all up. But these guys were on there. Okay, these are some people who have prestige, at least by the media and by academia, that, yeah, global warming is good, biodiversity, all this other stuff. So, they're getting where they're trying to give us some real bona fides. You might run into it. There's our state, and this is our map. This is the Indiana wind map. You can find that by typing in Indiana wind map and pop the thing out yourself. There's several other maps. I just kind of like the picture, I guess, because they're guide colors, brown and gray. But in there, I don't know the details, but it shows things. But again, this thing have a high. No, you can't see that. It's disappeared. Anyway, this is the wind map up there. Kentucky is lucky. They've got lousy wind, so you can't do a map. You gone over to Illinois? See all the nasty things there? Just terrible. We're going to talk more. We're getting into windmills. Isn't that beautiful? Just gorgeous. It'll take let me get my glasses and read this. I have a piece of nuclear waste here I want to show you. If I start turning green, it's just a kryptonite. One of these little tabs, I don't know if you can see it, it's about a half an inch by a quarter of an inch, will generate enough power to equal 100 of those fields right there. If you promise to give it back to me, I'll pass it around. And it's only plastic, it's not real. Okay, I didn't fly to Japan and get it. But there's just one little tab here. Thanks, sir. Oh, by the way, this is another prop too. That's all. I don't work or advertise for coal, but I got this thing that says coal equals jobs, and especially in Illinois, I like to carry it with me, or when I was working down there. Anyway, I want you to know that this is a real mess. They're ugly. They're useless. They're a boondoggle. If they were worth anything, just like ethanol, if they were worth anything, entrepreneurs would be building it themselves and taking their own risk, and they would be getting federal subsidies to stay afloat. By the way, because we're burning our food, people are finding in poor countries who import our corn and soybean, but especially our corn to our neighbors to the south, their taco prices are going up. The cost of their tortillas is going up. Okay, and these are the people who can't afford it because we're sticking it on a car because somebody in Washington thinks they know what they're doing. I don't know if you can see this too well. Excuse me. The one in the center's got a gray base. There's 400 gallons of coolant oil in that thing. It's leaking. All right? So now you have a biohazard. One of the other ones has one on the left. Again, you can't see it too well. Part of the housing is broken off. There's been things where the wing, the tips of the props come off, break, get hit by lightning. And they go flying around. This is Germany, where they invent these things. I guess it was going too fast. They overread it, I'm not sure. And there it is again. See the junk falling on the ground? Okay, so it's out in your cornfield, it's out in your soybean field. I don't know how much, probably a small area, but you still have a biohazard. And people are going to know if something happened to that windmill that's out there, that wind turbine. Yeah, this one I got from a friend in Illinois. They say you can farm with these things. Now, here's a few problems with the windmills. Let's go back, please. Thank you. Number one, once you put up a wind farm, you're stuck. Unless they change the contracts, they can take the heavy equipment anywhere they want and drive from one turbine to another when they come in during the length of the year, period of their contract. Number two, unless they've changed again, like I say, I'm going to put the caveat because I don't know, this is a little over a year old information. Unless they've changed the contract, excuse me, if you contract this thing, you can't tell anybody what's in the contract. What happened was some farmers up in Wisconsin had enough and they started to say, heck with that, we're telling everybody what we know. They weren't allowed to tell them what's going in the contract. They weren't allowed to tell them that they could take these big, heavy monster cranes and go driving across their cornfield or soybean field and compact the soil to 3 feet deep. And then trying to bring it back to grow. They didn't say, they weren't allowed to tell that the base for these things are about 40 feet of concrete. And if they take them down, they only have to take out the top 3 feet of it. And then you got all this concrete underneath there. They weren't also allowed to tell them once the contract was up and they weren't any more contracts, if it wasn't renewed, the farmer's responsible for the maintenance of these things. So while he's making his few $100,000 for 5 or 6 years for a field, or whatever he's making, I think they made it 5 figures per turbine in each field. So you had 10 turbines, you're looking at what, 100 grand or so, or better? $1 million, I don't know. Once the contract's over, you're stuck. Okay? Now, because the money was running out at the end of last year, the electrical unions in Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, or Ohio, and I don't have any guarantee of the contractor who's put these things up, but they pushed real hard to get all the especially down here in, was it Tipton County, right? To get those up before the end of this last year, because they didn't know if there was going to be any money renewed for this year. That's why you have those things down here in a big hurry. Now, GE, who is important these things because they don't build them in our country, they assemble them in our country, was going around talking to a lot of people saying, hey, don't worry, if we lose the government subsidy, how about if we put solar panels in your cornfields? Okay, less food to eat, less food in my gas tank. What are we doing here? Okay, because they were worried about it. So how are we going to help out? It's a cash crop that you and I are paying for with fiat currency, paid to some people so they can get wealthy, and the rest of us suffer for junk science. Now, what else? I'm staying on these for a minute. They have a very low cycle that you cannot hear audibly. But your body can hear this low cycle, and it makes you still. They have a thing called the flicker effect. You're sitting in the living room, the sun's coming over, and the windmill or the wind turbine is between you and your house, or the sun, and that flicker. It makes you ill. People have had to move out of their homes. People become physically ill. People giving up their property over this stuff. Italy finally got smart and said, all right, we have a moratorium. We're not building any more of these things. There's so many people getting sick. We're not building anything closer than 2 miles to any town. That's it. That's the Italians. Go figure. All right? There's a lot of problems with that. Okay, now here's the deal. Let's make you and me sick. What if we have a hog barn? What's it doing to our food? What's it doing to our cows? What's it doing to our milk? Our chickens? You know, they're mammals. So I don't know, but there is some slow science coming out. They're looking at what's going on with the animals. There's no concrete. I don't have any answers for that yet. I just know that they've started the studies, but I don't know any results of what they found yet. It's too early to tell right now. But this is a question to ask. Oh yeah. See, that corn, soybean field with rust comes. Guess what you can't do in a hurry? You can't spray it. No crop duster is going to come and fly in your field. You've got those babies up there. You're going to have to wait for the guy in the truck when the tractor shows up. Your crop might be gone by the time it gets to your property. What about the Indiana brown bat? Indiana brown bat and other bats, they found, because of the oscillation and the little signals that they send out, it's bounced back differently off those windmill blades. And it's causing a real problem with the brown bat. So if we lose the brown bat, we lose one of our greatest mosquito eaters. Here comes some more West Nile or something. Out in California, where we saw this beautiful stuff in northern Florida, they've had to shut some of these fields down because our friends, the watermelons, you know, they're green on the outside, red on the inside, who scream and shout for the California condor, the spotted green owl, the American eagle. Guess what? Collateral damage. They're killing our birds, our eagle, and all these endangered species. They're flying along and bam, they get whacked with these things. In one field alone, and it was suppressed. I don't know how it got out. Probably one of these, young kids with a little camera got out. So that's stupid. Over almost 5,000 birds in one field, somewhere out west. I can't tell you where. You've got a lot of homework to look up. Okay, this is from another scientific group. Can't give you their name. Union Concerned Scientists or something like that. Because of Americans, or specifically people in the West, when they say West, they mean us. People are causing global warming. Disruptions to our food and water supply are at risk. Our national security. You're hearing things called food security now on the news. Read about it in the paper. That's a code word, guys, for Agenda 21 worldwide. Food security. Well, Jesus said the poor will always have those. Not that we can't try and help them, but the thing is, they're going to be there. Record high temperatures and melting glaciers. Yeah, tell me about it. My wife and I tease each other with this nice extra long winter we had about how bad the global warming is around here. Flooding and droughts. Well, I started out with Genesis 1:1. And in my list of references, I have a couple of books on creation. And it come to my attention, and I'm going to stick with it. And if you want to discuss it, we won't do it tonight, but I'm going to make the statement. All the water that ever was is still right where it always was. That's right here. It's just someplace else in the world right now. Okay? So this is Hokum. The icebergs melting and stuff. It's all cycle. It's the earth taking care of itself the way it was created. Cycle itself. It's its own air conditioning system. By the way, studies were done a long time ago at the University of Tucson in Arizona, Tucson down in Arizona, where they made, I think they showed the biosphere over there. Long time ago, I read that they went in there and they did the global climate thing with the extra heat and the humidity and all the high water and all the stuff that some of this global warming is supposed to give us. Well, they're getting tomatoes the size of basketballs. Leviathan, anyone? Anybody that David met once or twice in his lifetime? 900-year-old people? Okay, thank Agenda 21. Now, how do you identify it's coming to you? You don't have it in your city that I know of specifically. So we're going to talk a little bit about Agenda 21 in this part. Now you got most of the background. And then we're going to tell you what you can do about it, which is, I say, the hardest work for last. Not for me, but for you. At one time, you could not get this. All right? This is unattainable. And then a guy named David Sitarz, S-I-T-A-R-Z, who was an environmental lawyer, worked with for Light Clinton. He was into this, and he did the one on the left. He made it available. So then the UN put it out there in their bookstore for $24.95. And if you want it, you can send out, give them $25 plus shipping. You get your own copy of Agenda 21. Well, we have to put it down into this big form, into a little form, to make it more workable. We want to work it with groups of people rather than all one big plan, because it won't sell to the American people if we give it to them from the top down. We have to come up with a bottom-up rising thing. Okay? So they come up with the thing on the right, which is the ICLEI. And I never get it right. It's called ICLEI. International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. Otherwise known as ICLEI. Okay. ICLEI is how they get into our towns and cities without doing Agenda 21. It's local governments for sustainability. It has 70 countries and about 570 million people involved in it. There's 4 cities in the state of Indiana that are official members of ICLEI. Bloomington, guess, no. South Bend, I'll give you a liberal list. Goshen's not in there. Bloomington, South Bend, Muncie of all things, I don't get Muncie. And Carmel, Indiana, where all the beautiful people in Hamilton County live. Okay? Now, Fort Wayne was on there for a while. Some guys I know went and delivered a couple of pieces of material on Agenda 21 to the city council. I think it was 11 of them. They put 11 in the pigeonholes. Next thing you know, we couldn't find Agenda 21 or ICLEI with Fort Wayne's name on it. Which doesn't mean they quit. This is the Wildlands map. This is an old map that originally had something of this form came out during the Nixon administration when they were doing a thing called land use and regionalization. All right, I need to explain the map to you a bit. The red stuff is where nobody can go. That's what we want to make totally primitive. Okay, so the earthworms can live happily, and the snails, and the coyotes, and the foxes, and all that other stuff, wild bears. The yellow stuff is the buffer zone. It's highly regulated. You may or may not be allowed to bring in animals. You may or may not be allowed to raise a field crop or build a home or take in timber or have a gravel pit or mine or anything like that, okay? You see down to the southwest side of the yellowish orange band, way down here around Mexico and Texas? That's called the border Paz sidebar agreement to the NAFTA. NAFTA, that's another one we can talk about all night long. That goes 100 miles into Mexico, but you can't see it goes 100 miles into the United States. So there's people and ranches all along that 100-mile boundary there on both sides who have their land ownership in jeopardy because that's a special buffer zone for whatever. You can't see Chicago or New York City too well, but we'll be allowed to live there. And that thing that Obama signed, the White House World Council thing, part of the plan there is to have you move into town. How are we going to do that? We don't fix it. Now we're going to move them out of the post office, shut them down, things like that. Okay, on the left is America. On the right is Carmel, Indiana. Sorry. And by the way, if you've gone down to downtown Indianapolis and watch all the building going on down there, To me, it reminds me of a lot of pictures I've seen of Mussolini too, with that kind of design and stuff. But on the left side, nobody wants us to live like that anymore. I should say a lot of people don't want us to live like that. We have our own yard, our own garden, a place for the kids to play, the dog to run. My neighbor, she's a college grad, and she's real happy because Louisville won. She moved up in a house in our neighborhood, and she decided she's going to raise chickens. So here's this young college lady raising chickens. It's cool. And they're especially fun, because that's her girl, so she walks around the neighborhood. But the idea is we won't be allowed to do that. But in case you all know how good homegrown organic chicken is. On the right is the new temptation. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do this in Carmel. We're going to do this now in Fishers, where I live. They're going to come up with something like that. They're going to do it in different parts of Indianapolis. What we're going to do is have the grocer, and the baker, and the tailor, and all that stuff. We're going to have all these shops on the bottom, and then you have the two apartments on top, going back to we live in the old way. But you'll notice the streets are built, you can only walk or ride a bike. They're not big enough for a car unless you have one of those little, what's that little roller skate put on each? Skateboard. Oh, which one? Skateboard? No, it's like it's a little car. You wind it up with one Kia or something. Whatever it is, a little tiny. It looks like something you put one on each foot and go down the street. But this is probably what we'll end up with. That I believe is from East Germany. That's my guess. But how many remember a place called Cabrini Green? How about Rocks? No, I can't remember that one section of Boston. It was so bad. Stack 'em and pack 'em is what they call it. Okay. Warehousing people. We're probably going to end up with that. And that's what a lot of that stuff downtown in Indianapolis looks like to me. Not that it did it on purpose, if these designers have no taste. Okay, now your tax dollar work. Remember Bill Clinton, we were going to have a curriculum on doing things? Here's what's right now in our schools from the U.S. Department of Education. You'll see there's a website there. You can go to jbs.org/issues and find this stuff. It's the ESD toolkit, and it's the Education for Sustainable Development toolkit. And some churches are involved with community gardens. Some of these community gardens, I have found out, are tied in with a thing called Gaia worship. Gaia is Mother Earth. And we'll probably see her before it's over. Community gardens, it sounds good, and it's great. They think an old dirty lot, fix it up, but what's behind it, just don't sound good. To me, if you've got propaganda that goes along with something, it's not good. It's not right. Here's this again. The Department of Education is a committed partner to the nation to build a more environmentally literate and responsible partner. So now Johnny's going to come home and tell on mommy and daddy or grandma and grandpa because they left the light on upstairs or they don't recycle and all that other stuff. Comment on recycling. An editorial comment on recycling. If I have to use my own labor to wash cans and separate garbage and not get a penny for it, that's slave labor. If you want to pay me for it, like in the old days, then that's not. Then I'll volunteer to do it. Don't make me do that. I remember as a kid in Scouts, we'd go along, we'd pick up a rack of papers, have paper drives, and we'd pick up soda bottles and all kinds of things to raise money. Back when we were young. This is one of 3 slides I put in here just to show you that everybody mentioned on this board of ICLI members, not one of them is from the United States of America. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Everybody's from a socialist country, even though, or a democracy, which is just as bad. These are our ICLI cities. There's been a few added, some has come off. There's been some real success in different areas where the city council and the county commissioners, even the state governments have been worked with by the citizens and had this thing changed. And while I'm on that, remember this. The folks here who you elected to run, to be in city council and on the state legislature and in the county commission and stuff, these folks are not in on it, okay? They have gone to associations of mayors and governors and state legislative committees like ALEC and the National Council of State Legislators and CLS. They've been to, the sheriffs are pretty good. The mayors have the national mayors thing, and the governors have theirs. And these people come in as guest speakers by the people who are financing it, who are Strong, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Brothers Foundation, and some of these other foundations, Bill Gates and them, bring in these experts, and they talk to our politicians, people we elected, and they come home thinking, oh man, I got this great idea, and we can get all this free money to put in a new street downtown and a bikeways, or whatever. Or how about, have you been up to Fort Wayne and seen the Gaia collection boxes, by the way? Instead of the, what do you call it, like the Salvation Army where you put your old clothes and stuff in, they have Gaia boxes up there. This is the Ohio River Basin Caucus. Look at all these states. And why is it go all the way down into Georgia, the Ohio River Basin, except maybe the rivers draining? Okay? This is going to be part and parcel. I can't give you it specific, but this is all part. And here are things coming up eventually if this thing keeps going forward. This is the Ohio Valley River System. I guess that's why Georgia is involved with that. But remember, Lost? If they don't use Lost, they're going to use something else. Not that we have to quit. This I found in a newspaper in Evansville a couple of years ago. Indiana legislators just formed the Ohio River Caucus. You can guess what party they were from. There was two from Evansville area, one from Jeffersonville. And I don't know where it went. Thing is we have a neighbor across the river called Kentucky. So we have friends there who are kind of watching, at least they're supposed to be watching, I don't know if they are anymore. This is called Air Schmear. This is how we indoctrinate our children. You can get this, or at least we got it last year, went to the ball game at Liberty Field down here where the Indians were playing, and they were giving these away, paid for by the city of Indianapolis. And then it talks about why air is good and why we should put it. It's all for our 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. And it had a nice young person just doing her civic duty, passing these out to the governor, mayor. Okay, there's a ton of stuff. Let me tell you about Gaia. Gaia is the New World religion I was telling you. The Ten Commandments, according to Gorbachev, for the New World religion, is the Earth Charter. In this Gaia religion, or an Earth Charter, or New World religion, they had a lady make a new ark called the Ark of Hope. Look it up on the internet, Ark of Hope. It has all the pagan symbols of air, wind, earth, fire, water, all that other stuff in it. They have the Tenemos books in there. Tenemos is a pagan Indian group, religion from South America, along with the Earth Charter. And at one time, it was going around from church to church in the United States. And I don't know if you can still find the videos or not, but you can see them having these ceremonies in these churches and things. Anyway, they got stopped in Indianapolis. And that's a story I will tell you some other time over coffee. So what do? First of all, if you want to accept this job, and I don't know what you guys are going to do, you just ask me to come and tell you who, what, where, and when as best I can. This is not something that you can let go of at the next election. I'll warn you now, if you grab hold of this, it's going to be a tough job. Some people aren't going to want to talk to you. You'll have opposition from people who think they know better, but they don't. And they're going to give you all kinds of circular arguments about it and drive you crazy. You're going to have politicians who are going to be pressured. Remember, they're hearing from experts from ALEC and other places. Can you all hear me back there?
Not very well.
Well, then you got to come on up. My speaker's breaking. That must be our coffee gang. Come on down. Bring the coffee with you. If not, I apologize. This is serious stuff if you do it. It's going to take a lot of work. You're going to have to break up into teams. Some of you are going to have to do research. Some of you are going to have to get ready to make presentations. Some of you are going to have to form the committees and plan what you're going to do. And you can't go clobbering the city council with this. You have to do things like check the soil and water board, check the drainage board, see what Parks and Recreation has, waste treatment, city development and planning. All these things have to be looked at to see if you can find words like smart growth, smart equity, stakeholders, smart codes, sustainable consumption, sustainable development, sustainable land use, I'm getting sustained here, open space, and things like that, bike lanes. If you see a city plan where all of a sudden your main street is narrower, so you can have bike lanes and trees and stuff, part of it. A friend of mine over in Bloomington Normal has been fighting this for several years on this issue. And this is what they had in their city plan. And you'll see that, I think someone brought up tonight, something about some money coming in to the city for some kind of downtown refurbishment or something. See what they're going to do with it. It's just like, an aside here, the NAFTA Superhighway. You may have heard of the NAFTA Superhighway. Well, it was pretty well defeated. But because we had a downturn in the economy, typically the government does what? Builds highways. So what they do, all of a sudden we have these, what the plans were for building and expanding the highways, not exactly the NAFTA plan, but they're still doing it in some places, where they're building 6-8 laners, they're spreading the bridges, making them higher, all this other stuff. And that's all was part of the original plans out of NAFTA. So, like Rahm Emanuel said, Rahm Emanuel said a catastrophe or disaster is a hard thing to waste, or a hard thing to waste.
Don't let a good crisis go to waste. Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Don't let a good crisis go to waste. Okay, thank you. All right, so with that admonishment of hard work, what do? There's tons of things to do. First of all, and a quick look at your website up here for the County of Wabash. There's the County Council, Soil and Water District, the Economic Development and Redevelopment Boards. Those are two you really need to look at. Area Planning, Solid Waste, and Drainage Board. And there's some other boards that don't even know what they are yet. Check the Parks and Recreation Department. In the city, you have the City Council, Wastewater, Sewer, and Public Works. Look for any volunteer groups or volunteer committees that the city puts together to go clean up the neighborhood or something. You have to be ready to do a lot of sitting in meetings and taking notes. You have to study the Delphi technique because they'll use it on you. I'll only tell you it's a way to control the audience and isolate different people, which...
How do you spell that, please?
D-E-L, just like Delphi, Indiana, D-E-L-P-H-I,
Thank you.
the Delphi technique. There's a lady called, look up, Democrats, check this out. Democrats against Agenda 21, from California no less. Go to their website, it's .org. Democrats against Agenda21.org. Ms. Coira has a real good explanation of the Delphi technique. The other one is go to Tom DeWeese's, just type in Tom DeWeese and go to his homepage.
American Policy.
American Policy Center, thank you. AmericanPolicyCenter.org. Tom DeWeese has some of the best explanation on how to go to a city council meeting or any of these board meetings. Plus, good work on fighting and preparing yourself for the Delphi technique. Okay? Because these people are not going to play fair, and they're not going to be nice to you. There's another website, while we're on websites, jbs.org, the outfit I used to work for. There's two things there. Number one is, on their main website, you see Agenda 21. So click on Agenda 21. There's a lot of free downloads, including this how-to booklet. Sorry about that. This how-to, I don't know how you got that on Agenda 21. That's our cover, or that's the JBS cover, but this is about 21 pages. And I've been using this as part of my outline. But this gives you some details. It needs some work, but very good. Tom DeWeese has a whole kit for about $180, $200. Amazon, I found it for $159. Tom DeWeese has, I don't know if he has what the John Birch Society has. So John Birch Society has things you can download and pass material out. Okay? They have a DVD, which you should have. You can order it online from the JBS, and you can buy these by the candy and just take them out. Reprints on what's going on, just to start things off. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Just go look at it. And plan your team of who's going to do the looking. Because if everybody's looking around, you're going to end up banging into each other like a bunch of wild neutrons. Okay, so you've already got some things organized. So let me just give you that, if I can. You're going to have to see what Wabash is up to, the county and the city. You have, I know you have partners, from my past experience, I know you have partners who are interested in this up in Elkhart and Goshen, Fort Wayne and Kendallville area, way down in White County and Bluffton. So on this side of the state, you've got some people who are willing to do something to support, but you need to go find them. What you can also do when you download this stuff, there's petitions in there, there's sample legislation that's ready to go in a Word document, so your legislator, or whatever level, can adjust it and edit it to your specific location. There's also a PDF, but I don't have Adobe, so I don't mess with that. Agenda 21, again, is something that I don't think we should have. And I think you agree, and that's why you have me here. It's not very nice to be told that you have to do this, that, or that, or the other with your yard, or can't with your yard. You know, zoning laws are bad enough now. And that has nothing to do with Agenda 21. How many of you play golf, by the way? Just me? Even the USGA is talking about sustainability on the golf courses and new ways to water. Okay? That's how it's permeated so much of this stuff. You see Waste Management bragging on TV in their commercials. Now, there's nothing wrong with conservation. Nothing is wrong with conservation. When it's government mandated, when it detracts and destroys your lifestyle and your way of life, then I've got to ask questions about it. Most of us conserve. In my little yard, I've got a composter. It takes a while, but it works. Every time we cut the grass and we don't bag it, we're putting nitrogen back in the soil. If any of you own timberland, I know you're conserving things because you have to keep your crop going. So, we don't need this. It's an evil thing. The people we work with locally have no clue. I'm not saying that they're knuckleheads. I'm just saying that they're innocent. They don't know the danger that they're facing. And so we have to be gentle with them. We can't go beat up the mayor. And I'll give you an example. Not a beaten up, but don't have a clue. Up in the Chicagoland area, many of those cities are part of ICLEI. If you remember that one map I showed. And there was a person I met who lived in Addison. Addison is not a member of ICLEI. She was so concerned about Agenda 21, she made an appointment with the mayor for she and I and another person to go visit the mayor and explain this to him. And after an hour's meeting, we got exactly no understanding because it was a total paradigm shift for him. He couldn't see anything wrong with it, and he wasn't threatened with it. Okay? So it's going to be not an easy push if you want to do this, which is just what the other side is relying on. That it's hard work. It takes tenacity. You just can't stop in the middle of the next election and run around putting up yard signs for somebody. You've got to stick to this and let other people go do the politicking. and the yard sign work and stuff. This is really going to be hard if you commit to it. It's going to cost you a few dollars, not too much. The most it's going to cost you at any one time is a large, massive purchase of something to make a mass distribution of something. But you can get a lot of stuff for free. Now, I gave Mrs. Cole a list of all my research references. I gave her Agenda 21, how-to manual, and a PDF I think each one either PDF or Word document to print out. I gave her a list of my overview of Agenda 21. Remember I was citing those chapters and sections and stuff from Agenda 21? Because that was really difficult to go through. So there's other things that she has available that as soon as she comes back to the can, you can get even with her by saying, hey, we want a copy of it. Let me see where we're at. This is the John Birch Society webpage. If you go to that webpage, you're going to see that. You're going to see that Agenda 21 there. Click on it. You come up to the next page and scroll down, and see the red boxes, the red-headed letter, highlighted boxes. Those are where you're going to find your downloads and your videos, all kinds of stuff you can go to. Since they're on YouTube, once they're out there, right? And then, of course, you have the reprints. And there's a booklet on it, which gives you a little other information on it. This is a pass-along card. And the manual I just showed you, you can download it. But there's what you need. You organize. And by the way, in the study, don't study and then go do it because you're going to run out of time. You have to do both. You have to multitask on it. You have to study and do it. Study and do it. Pick it back. Find some people who will listen, and then don't give up. If you guys win, maybe somebody else get enough courage to win too. Oh. What did we do here? Where's my technician? Got all my secret stuff on there. Okay. So I guess we're doing pretty good on time. Where's my little nuclear thing? Where did it get to? It's still going, okay. This thing here is the same size, but it says that this is how they store it safely. Okay. By the way, if a nuclear generating plant burns up or something, you're not going to have a nuclear explosion and things like that. Chernobyl is different. That was from a socialist country. By the way, Fukushima, Japan, you know what happened to that thing? That thing was built by General Electric. The Japanese, don't say, this time we got to give them a pat on the back. The Japanese engineers decided to build the buildings that this reactor went into to their specs, not the ones that General Electric recommended. When that thing went, the part that GE built is fine. The part that the Japanese decided they were going to do it their way, that's what went. Not the reactor is fine. That's still American engineering. Okay, so we have to give GE a pat on the back. Well, guys, I finished a little bit sooner than I expected, so I'll